It's another Wednesday, which means we get to do business. It's an inspiring story, so you've got to stay tuned. Now, doing business in Ghana, we all know, could be very daunting. But one physically challenged person is bracing the odds to make a living from the sale of coconuts. On AM Business this week, we follow the story of Emmanuel, who sells coconuts on the streets of Accra, and how the Ghana Federation for the Disabled is working to improve the livelihoods of its members.
When you're weak, I'll be strong. When you let go, I'll hold on.
Owning a business or getting a job can be a challenge for anyone. But there are many more difficulties with starting a business or maintaining a job when you are disabled. Emmanuel has been wheelchair bound for as long as he can recall, but he operates his own coconut selling business.
Oh, Misha Sefi, Nekurasi. Now first, now Miyekubangwa.
I started from my village where I produced coconut oil, but at a point in time, I wasn't getting the type I needed for production. So I started distributing the fleshy part to people who were selling coconut. They began mishandling my money, which I didn't like. It took quite a time to get my returns. I decided to look for a place to begin the coconut selling all by myself. My revenue is doing well. It's not enough, but I am okay. At the end of the month, I am able to make about 300 Ghana cedis. It may not be enough, but I am comfortable with what I have.
In addition to normal business expenses, Emmanuel explains he experiences other hardships due to his disability.
I wake up around 4 a.m. to get to the market for the coconuts. I always struggle with my competitors. They underestimate me because I'm in a wheelchair, but I try to get a little. The drivers also don't treat me well because I am in a wheelchair. I sometimes stand at the roadside for an hour without a car. I get help from my wife in setting up the place.
Tax exemptions on business are one of the laws pertaining to disabled persons in business. But whether these laws work in Ghana is the question we ask. Often, people with disabilities are underrepresented in the world of entrepreneurship and usually experience a high unemployment rate. The 2010 Population and Housing Census puts the population of disabled persons at 15 to 20%, and 3% of them are severe conditions. That explains that over 15% are able to fit within the working category, but the statistics don't reflect.
Business environment for persons with disabilities, as you put it, is not quite challenging. Quite challenging could mean that it's mildly challenging, but it's significantly challenging. It does present the person with disability with a great deal of obstacle. First of all, you ought to know that for a person with disability engaged in business, the individual ought to fight societal perception regarding his or her ability to perform so far as that business is concerned. That individual in some cases run the risk of not attracting customers owing to negative societal perception about what might have or might not have caused the individual's disability. Meaning, if society is of the perception that the individual's disability was caused by some case of a sort, then obviously society will not want to have anything to do with the person's business. So attracting relevant relevant customers to promote the individual's business becomes a problem. In addition to that, persons with disabilities who even have members of society patronizing their businesses, in some cases do suffer one form of abuse or the other. People seeking to take advantage of the individual because of their disability, or people simply disrespecting the individual in relation to the business they are doing simply because of their disability. In some other cases, because of the nature of the individual's disability, some cases they are cheated by members of the society or relevant service providers.
However, there are a number of government incentives and programs for people with disabilities engaged in business. For example, the Ghana Disability Act Section 10 has provision for employers of disabled persons as well as disabled persons engaged in businesses. Dennis Darcy is Executive Secretary for the Ghana Council of the Disabled.
Like all Ghanaians who work, there are laws which protect persons who do businesses in Ghana. So they are covered by those laws. But for persons with disability, because of their uniqueness, some of these laws specifically make mention of protection for persons with disability. So for example, if you take the Labour Act, you realize that certain sections, Part 5 of the Labour Act, 45 downwards, specifically makes mention of certain incentives and protection to be given to persons with disability who are in employment. Then if you take the Disability Act, Section 10 of the Disability Act also has provisions which protect persons with disability in business. So there are laws which protect them.
But is this truly the case? Does the law really consider all persons with disability who are into business? Alex Bankole Williams is the spokesperson for the Federation of Disabled Persons and expresses his frustration about the act.
The Persons with Disabilities Act of Ghana 2006 is one such law, and specifically Section 10(2) of that law does indicate that government must give persons with disabilities who are engaged in business or enterprise special incentives. But that law was passed in 2006. Before that law was Act 651, which is the Labour Act of Ghana. Section 46(2) of the Labour Act of Ghana again states clearly that persons with disability who are engaged in business or enterprise must be given special incentives. When you look at the legislative instrument, so far as that law is concerned, as the Labour Act, Act 651 is concerned, it doesn't really go into details as to what the nitty-gritties or the nature of the legislation, what the incentive should be. Unfortunately, the Persons with Disabilities Act, as it stands currently, has no legislative instrument whatsoever to talk about, having the opportunity to give some interpretation to what Section 10(2) of the Disability Act says. The incentives ought to be made known by the minister, which in this case is the minister in charge of labor relations. However, as we speak, I know of no such legislation or interpretation of what the incentives are for persons with disabilities who are engaged in business or enterprise.
Incentives for employees of disabled persons, tax cuts for disabled persons, among others, are part of the things listed under the Section 10 of the Persons with Disability Act 2006. Clearly, there seems to be a gap between existence of the law and its implementation. So what is the reaction of the states to this?
For persons with disability who are engaged in private business, that aspect of the incentives, so far as I am concerned, they are not benefiting. They are not benefiting because I'm yet to find a person with disability who's in private business applying for that facility. Yes, so far as I'm concerned, they are not benefiting. Yes, but they also
around a little bend. We've always just been this team.
Well, that one is in the general business environment. Any other benefits in the general business environment, they enjoy it. But this specific provision in the Act, it's two ways. For example, as a council, we need to know these people who are engaged in private business and are entitled to these incentives. And we have to find a way of assisting them to access or get the incentives. And the other aspect has to do with they themselves also applying.
Although the solution to these challenges may not be yielding soon, there are few alternatives by government to keep disabled persons in business. At district level, for instance, there are some financial provisions, that is 3% of common fund, are given to the district assembly to support persons with disability.
Apart from even what the Act says, currently, I think it started in 2005, where 3% of the common fund sent to the district assemblies. 3% of that amount sent to each district assembly is set aside specifically to support persons with disability. And I know in almost all the districts, part of that money is used to support persons with disability who are engaged in microfinancing. Some of them are trained and some of them are supported with tools to be able to work on their own. So currently that is, I would say, one major intervention that government is implementing. Every assembly gets that money. There is a committee in place. The committee is made up of representations from disabled people's organizations. So they meet, they look at applications. Depending on the merits, they are approved. In fact, through this fund, some persons with disabilities have been able to set up their own businesses. Some have received training, some have even gone to school, and some have received assistive devices. So this is a major intervention which is helping persons with disability.
Notwithstanding, there's a strong call for the laws to be looked at and put into full implementation.
What has been spoken, the Federation is expecting to see a lot more being done. Practically, the Federation has submitted a draft amendment to the current Persons with Disabilities Act. We are hoping that government gives it its full backing and adopts the document. Beyond that, the Federation has spoken about the need to have matters of persons with disabilities included in Ghana's proposed affirmative action bill.
And there was my dad.
Again, the ministry has shown some willingness to ensure that this is done. But beyond showing the willingness, we actually want to see these things done.
Having a disability no longer needs to hold people back from starting a business. It is the core mandate of the Council of Disabled Persons to propose and evolve policies and strategies to enable persons with disability enter and participate in the mainstream of the national development process. In this 21st century, more than ever, it has become critical for the Council to get more disabled persons in business to achieve this mandate.
When you're weak, I'll be strong. When you let go, I'll hold on. And when you need.
We hope you did enjoy business today, sharing the story of physically challenged Emmanuel, who is bracing the odds to make ends meet. We do business every week here on the show on Wednesdays, as brought to us courtesy EcoBank.